3, 2, 1. What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Here the Spear, presented to you by NoleGameday.com. We're here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening, and Dustin is in Duval. Dustin's in the D over there in Jacksonville. Austin Vesey's down there below with me. He's about to get a little bit of that Debbie hurricane up there in Charlotte. Gonna have some rain the next day and a half. And I'm here without a car, and training camp is in full swing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Kalen DeLoach is killing it day by day, and I'm missing all the engagement on Twitter. So here we are on a fun-filled Wednesday evening. Florida State is over in Jacksonville. They are at camp. They made it through the storm. They're at the Jacksonville facility. We'll jump through everything because Dustin and our guy Tommy were in attendance for that. So we're going to give you guys a full rundown. We're going to talk about two freshmen that are really impressing us early on to begin Florida State's season and early camp. We're going to talk about those two players, and then we're going to talk about Florida State's first scrimmage that they had inside Doak Campbell Stadium. We heard from Mike Norvell, and we heard from Adam Fuller afterward as well, and we actually got a chance to jump in and ask some questions to both of those gentlemen. So handful of things here. We'll also talk some NFL Noles and training camp as well. Maybe a game plan to get VZ on site to see J-Trav and get the latest on that. We'll see. But we're going to jump into a handful of things. Once again, just like last week's episode, full of fall camp goodies. So if you want all the nuggets and scoop, this is a place to be. As always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. But gentlemen, we're here. We're not with you though, Dustin, over and Duval. You and Tommy, y'all aren't in the same rooms or anything. But do y'all hang out with each other? Is there like a limit of time you're over there at his place at 8 or 9, or does Tommy? I think Tommy comes to your place, probably to your room.
We have not really been in one another's hotel rooms yet. We've mostly been hanging out outside of the rooms. You know, grabbed some dinner last night. Had to hit PF Chang's. That's like a tradition every time we go to Jacksonville or Orlando, and then obviously went out to practice this morning. Came back to the hotel, put a little bit of work in, then we went out and grabbed some lunch. And after that, man, we had to take a chill pill for a little bit. So maybe we'll reconvene after this podcast, or maybe I won't see him again until the morning. Who knows?
No, but the beers are being consumed, right? I was told this yesterday, unless y'all were lying to me that y'all use the company card on the consumption, like how much you bought beers wise.
You'll just have to check that receipt whenever we check out.
Wonderful. That's just great.
No comment.
It's okay. Work trips are supposed to be fun trips. So definitely, I mean, you're not out there on the football field, like necessarily out there, like the players have to go through hell, but you're out there. You kind of went through hell today. Mike Norvell turned off the AC and the entire facility. Let's first jump into giving us a rundown of kind of what the vibe was going from the difference of UNF's practice fields, which we were really worried during the week that Florida State was going to put players out there onto the field on that kind of intramural field, but luckily
they will be
tomorrow. They're going to give it a shot. Okay,
we can get into that, but yeah, I mean, I thought today, you know, obviously a change of venue, something that Florida State wasn't necessarily expecting whenever this week started, but the tropical storm / hurricane, whatever Debbie is being referred to now, obviously came through Tallahassee, hit Jacksonville, a lot of the state of Florida, and has moved north since then. So just the weather over the past couple of days kind of made those fields unusable on Wednesday, and sound like Florida State, they had some people go out to UNF and, I mean, check out the fields, and they just determined, you know, it wasn't the safest option for today. So luckily, the Jacksonville Jaguars were able to let FSU use their indoor flex practice field, and I mean, it was really nice. You know, a lot of space in there, and I felt like there was a ton of energy for this practice. You know, a good amount of guys on this team have made the UNF trip before, and you know they know what is expected out of them whenever they come to Jacksonville for this trip each year. But to get a chance to come here and go use a professional facility for a day, something you weren't expecting to do, I think it brought up a lot of excitement out of the players, and I mean, it was a really physical and competitive practice throughout.
We got to get to the part where you said too that the AC was shut off from Mike Norvell, and he just wanted to challenge the players. This is also challenging the media members here, D-Lou, and you're a man that gets hot very easily. You know, every time we go into an Airbnb, it's very cold, and I enjoy cold I enjoy like nice and cool, but you're even cooler, not in the like actual like term of you being cool. It's just you colder.
Yeah, I'm
But
not cool.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't say wow, VZ. You've roasted this man the last few
I
weeks on
no,
the
you
show. So
you took the words out of my mouth. I'm impressed.
there you go. But no, but it's hot. It was hot as hell in there. So how'd that go for you? And also, did it really affect any other players, or did everybody kind of move in motion there like you were in Tallahassee?
Well, I will say the weather in Jacksonville, with the storm moving out, it was really, really nice this morning. I mean, kind of dark skies, but as far as the temperature wise, we were sitting there low 80s, high 70s there before Florida State started practice this morning. Had a really nice breeze moving through. So I mean, you were feeling good. You got into the indoor practice facility, you could feel that AC a little bit. And you're like, all right, well, this is going to be a comfortable practice for the day. And actually, me and Tommy were walking the sidelines, and I noticed the AC vent or whatever over there, and it was cool at that point. And 30 minutes, an hour goes by, we're still standing there on the sideline. We're not exerting ourselves. I mean, we're just standing there typing with our fingers. And all of a sudden, start feeling some sweat going down my forehead. I'm like, what is going on in here? Like, I am soft. I was worried. I was worried. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, man,
Yeah.
if we transition to UNF tomorrow, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
But then we get there for the post practice presser, and Mike Norvell, joked around a little bit, said they shut the AC off. He was hoping that they could have turned the heat on, just doing whatever they can to kind of mess with the players a little bit. I don't think that environment nearly as taxing as being under that Tallahassee sun. But I mean, it was they made it as tough as they could, considering what they were having to deal with on Wednesday.
Well, there's a whole nother day of it. One thing about Jacksonville, it allows these guys to build relationships, build a bond, and that's really the importance of this entire trip all alone is, getting out, doing different things, working together, because this is a big group. I think of the transfer portal changing the game for college football now, and specifically Florida State, because Mike Norvell does such a big job of adding in these new players. And sometimes they're just 1-year players at this point, too, and your friggin' quarterback's one of them. So going out doing these kind of things right here is something that I think helps build a lot of your team chemistry just off a relationship standpoint in the locker room. But then, too, you got to build that accountability, and you lost a lot of leaders last year. And this is where I think you going on the end quote road for the first time away from Tally for practice. This is where you start to see those leaders kind of stand out a little bit. And we'll talk some more too and jump into this practice of what you saw today specifically, because there's a lot like Malik Benson, Marvin Jones Jr. had a really stellar day. He's out of that green jersey too. Del Jackson, Joshua Farmer, DB room. It seems like defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of impressive things to talk about later this evening. But let's talk about kind of the theme right now of what this stream's about. And it's about some freshmen that are really impressing you, Dustin, and the rest of our staff and the beat as well. There are some youngsters, literally newcomers that just arrived on this campus weeks, you could say, at this point, that have come on and really been able to make some strides and kind of shock you guys a little bit. If you want to go into these guys, we talked about them the last couple of months, just gearing up for fall camp with them since they're newcomers. It's Elijah Moore and Amari Williams. Which one do you want to start off with here, D-Lou? I think I want to lean Elijah, because there's some really fun stuff too as well to talk about Amari Williams, noting the class change and position change.
I mean, there's fun stuff to go. I mean, whichever path you want to go down to kind of start here. But like you said, both of these kids just got here in the summer, and when you're talking about true freshmen joining a college football team that's obviously got some veterans coming back, they've added double-digit players in the transfer portal. You're probably thinking, all right, well, it's going to be tough for some of these freshmen to get on the field in 2024. But man, I'm liking the early returns that we're seeing from this Tribe 24 class. I mean, I really think these freshmen, there could be multiple guys that end up being special players at Florida State in the coming years. And I mean, that's outside of Elijah Moore and Amari Williams. I mean, just far as Elijah, I feel like he got off to the preseason with a really good start. I mean, came out in that first practice and second practice and balled out. And I mean, he's continued to make plays over the last couple of weeks. I would say some normal freshman up and downs. Like today, he had a couple balls that went off his hand, but he was able to respond late by bringing in the deep one. So I thought that was a good response by him. And, you see that size out there. I mean, 6'4", guy can leap out of the building. He's got really good body control whenever he's in the air, solid hands as well. Like I said, a couple drops today, but that's not something that we've seen pop up a ton from Elijah Moore throughout this preseason. And I feel like he's just making the most of his opportunities. Whenever he's in there, whether it's against the veterans, whether it's against younger players, I feel like Elijah Moore is just producing and he's taking advantage of those reps whenever they come. And I would say the same thing with Amari Williams. I mean, the youngest guy on Florida State's football team, just 17 years old. Like you said, Logan reclassified from that 2025 class to 2024. We thought he might begin his career at defensive end, but instead he comes out on the offensive side of the ball at tight end, room where Florida State. Are you guys hearing that?
Is that a fire alarm going on?
It was the ice maker, but that tight end room at Florida State, only 5 scholarship players entering the preseason. Amari Williams jumps in there. He's kind of your sixth guy at the moment. And I mean, he's just been really impressive. Not only as a receiver, which he's very natural in that facet, and you're seeing a good amount of plays made downfield and contested catches. He had a really nice one on Tuesday on the sideline with Cam Riley covering him, but also his blocking as well. Feels like he's made some good strides there.
That's what I was going to say for Elijah Moore. In order for him to get playing time, he's got to go out there and block. Has he been blocking well from what you've seen? And it's just so early too, of course, and literally just got pads on for a true freshman in college. But in order to get for the comments are going to say now is where we're going to see playing time from this young kid. It's going to be up to blocking for the most part. He can make these grabs, and he's of course got to get the routes down and everything. But blocking's always a big factor for Mike Norvell's offense.
Yeah, it's something that they really look for out of these receivers. They want them to be able to contribute in the running game and at times when they're not touching the football. It's important to continue to stay involved, even on the plays where the ball isn't coming your way. I can't say that I've seen a ton out of Elijah Moore's blocking so far. It's something I can keep an eye on here moving into – it's crazy to say, but next week, final week of the preseason, and then we're going to have a game week here. So, I mean, we can continue to monitor that over the last couple of preseason practices. But, I mean, I feel like he's given himself the best opportunity. I mean, this is someone who's a little bit behind the 8 ball, if you will, since he wasn't here for spring practice. Didn't get to go through that tour of duty and have that experience like some of the other freshmen in that 2024 class. But with what he was asked to do since getting to Florida State, I mean, I think he's done probably more than expected at this point. And I don't think it would be a surprise because this wide receiver unit, I mean, I don't want to say that it's a potential weak spot for Florida State, but it's just been very inconsistent, I think, this preseason, which is a trend that dates back to the spring.
Yeah, I know. That's going to be a discussion for us if we jump into this last preseason week next week on the show. We're going to be talking heavily about the wide receiver room. I was just talking about it on Tribe Check with Emily's show over there. Check her out on YouTube. Wide receiver room is starting to become a big kind of question mark. I was talking about it too on the Mark Rogers show when we were previewing that position. Get into an interesting discussion, gentlemen, when we get closer and closer to the season, and that unit alone, you've got the talent, but there's some certain things that have got to improve on or find who's going to step up and get into those roles, stay healthy, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah,
Amari Williams, time.
You don't have much more time with this, and you feel like you should have had a foundation sort of built after the spring, and you probably felt that way, but maybe there hasn't been things haven't been clicking like you maybe had thought so far in the fall camp. And not that there's a disaster, of course, everybody, no disaster, but it's just got to be figure out who's going to step in those roles, and you feel a little like uneasy going into the season so far off what we've seen in fall camp from the wide receiver room and building the chemistry and the connections there from the quarterbacks. We'll see. I don't know. That's just something that's starting to become a bigger discussion for just going off of what, the observations and everything and what we're reading from your take. So,
yeah. But I mean, outside of Elijah Moore and Amari Williams, I just noted down a couple freshmen real quick that we can kind of jump into. I feel like have flashed this preseason. Yeah. We can kind of go from top to bottom. And that's not that they're in order, but I just mean offense to defense. We'll start at quarterback. But like Luke Romanhock, I mean, you've seen some impressive strides since the spring. I feel like he's more comfortable in the offense. had a couple passes sail on him these last couple of days, but I mean, when this guy's in a rhythm, he's as accurate as they come. Got a really strong arm, and one thing about him, I mean, he's not afraid to take some dangerous chances. I mean, obviously that can lead to some reward, but there's some risk as well. You know, you go to the backfield, Mekhi Danzy and Cam Davis, both of them doing their part in a very loaded running back room this preseason. Cam Davis, we mentioned the word last week, bowling ball with that frame and his ability to move. I mean, it surprises you with that speed. And then Mekhi Danzy, just elite. Get him in the open field, and it's reminiscent of a taller Jalen Lucas, where he's just flying by the defense. Yeah, we talked to Mari, we talked to Elijah, Luane McCoy, another true freshman receiver. He put together some really good practices last week. Had a nice move today on Wednesday to create some space on a short catch. I feel like Luane, he's another one of those guys who could get involved in 2024, depending on how the rest of this preseason unfolds. And I'll mention BJ Gibson as well. It feels like him and Luke Kromenhoek connect on at least one deep ball every practice. There was a stretch where I think 3 out of 4 practices they were able to hit a touchdown in one-on-ones with BJ just getting off the line of scrimmage, getting behind the DB, Luke putting the ball in a good spot, him making the catch. Go over to defensive side of the ball. Nas White and Jamori Flagg, 2 guys who aren't going to play a ton for Florida State in 2024 in that defensive tackle room, but I feel like the potential is there for them to continue to develop throughout this year and, into the coming years. Seen some really positive signs with their physicality. They're taking well to the coaching staff. Nas White actually had a rep last week in a drill that I refer to as 3-on-2s, but basically you got 3 offensive linemen matched up against 2 defensive linemen, and they're fighting for every inch of space possible. And he drove back, I think it was John Daniels, and I mean, gave him a nice little pop where his helmet even popped off. And Norvell, Odell, those defenders, they all love that one.
Hell yeah.
Got Tamir Hickman Collins, who feel like his instincts are getting better since the spring. He's around the ball very often whenever he's in. Jaden Parrish had a forced fumble recovery earlier this week. Charles Lester had his first interception of the preseason on Monday. Ricky Knight, a really competitive and savvy defensive back. I mean, he's another guy in coverage. Feels like he's always in position to either get a deflection or an interception. He dropped one today, but I mean, man, he's been locked down. And then Kai Bates as well. I feel like he's really good in coverage. So I think Florida State, man, the early returns they've hit on this 2024 class.
That's really exciting to hear about. Extremely exciting to hear about. And I want to go back real quick too, just to talk about that wide receiver room. And I think the chat is bringing up a good point as well. And that's in your observations today. I mean, in Jacksonville, it seems like the defensive back room excelled and showed out. Florida State's quarterback room has got a big time challenge every morning. They're going against this defensive line, and then they're also having to deal with Florida State's defensive back room under Coach Surtain, who has excelled. And now you're seeing youngsters have the shine as well. But you already know what you have there with Fentrell and Azray, who seem to have been these, early stars of fall camp. Delu, like you were saying when we spoke on here the last 2 weeks, like those 2 guys have been practically locked down for their position. So it hasn't been the easiest there for that quarterback room and probably the wide receivers as well to get open and make these plays. So like the chat is saying, and maybe it's iron sharpens iron, and you see this unit actually excel, and we are getting a true taste of what could be a really special season for your 2 starting cornerbacks in the defensive back room overall. But just going back to some of those freshmen, man, I was just going to say, that's so exciting to hear. Florida State did a really good job recruiting in that, like you said, in that 2024 class. These are some really good things to hear.
It's huge. And I mean, they're doing the same thing right now with this 2025 class as well. So I think Florida State, and I mean, you look back to the 2023 class, you're seeing some good developments from a lot of those guys. They really have continued to set themselves up with a foundation that's going to be helpful now, but also in the future as well. I mean, this roster is just continuing to stack up talent year over year, where, you look at some of the players who are maybe on the bottom half of Florida State's roster 2 or 3 years ago. And, looking back, a lot of those guys maybe necessarily weren't high level FBS Power 4 football players. I think that's the difference now. I mean, this entire roster it looks like an elite D1 football team. The size is there, the speed is there. There's a lot of potential here, but it's all got to come together on paper in less than 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Jamari Flag, like I said last week, I'm a big fan. Big fan. I mean, the internet loves him when he was going viral and everything. Watching him walk in as they should, it's hilarious. If you can actually give us some more Jamari Flag, you or Tommy, while you're there as one of your things, we just need an update on Jamari Flag and how pissed off and unhappy he looks coming into practice.
He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. He'll say good morning. I mean, he's just got one of those faces. He's a football player.
That's a nice way of putting it. He just looks pissed, and I don't blame him. I mean, after a while, this gets old, and you're a true freshman coming in practice. I mean, when we played, some practice, majority of them I wanted nothing to do with. They suck until you play on Friday nights. So, but yeah, Jamori's just like the rest of us sometimes, just don't want to get up too early and get to practice. But Mike Norvell, on the other hand, though, man, he's racing, and I feel like today was one of his fastest strides. I don't know how you got him on the frame, D-Lou, whenever he was striding. I'm impressed. I'm seeing the improvement in D-Lou's camera recording. We're getting better. Some are very, very, very close up. Maybe get a little bit out a little bit. Get out, give it a little bit of room. But they're looking good, and you got a good shot of Marvin Jones Jr. and Tommy did of him racing Mike Norvell, and I'm sure the Jacksonville media loved it as well.
I'm working hard. I think there's been some improvements with the video recording skills over the last year and a half or so. And I will say today, you just had to be a little bit careful with how things were, with Florida State having some guys who weren't participating also in the building and close by to where stuff was being recorded. I was trying to do my part not to get anything on film that's not allowed to be.
Yeah,
but I'll take your criticism to heart, and I'll play it tomorrow.
Yeah, just get better. Just get better as I try to technically get this video of, here we go. We'll just go full screen on it and just watch it here. But here's a video, if you're watching on YouTube, of Mike Norvell racing Marvin Jones Jr. And it was just good to see that because he's out of that green jersey. And it seems like he's a full 100% because I know there was some questions in the chat the last couple of weeks. What's going on, Marvin Jones Jr.? We aren't talking a lot about Marvin Jones Jr. It's all Pat Payton, Sione. Marvin Jones Jr., you talked about him in your practice observation. Seems like he had a really, really nice day in Duval.
Yeah, we talked about who we're allowed to talk about. But, yeah, it was really encouraging to see Marvin Jones Jr., showing that explosion there on that pre-practice race with Mike Norvell. Winning, I think, second time in 3 days, maybe 2 days in a row that he was able to beat Norvell in the race. But either way, that's going to feel good for MJJ. And then, yeah, as far as today, man, I thought he was really, really good, making the offensive line work. Just coming with quality rep after quality rep and, putting some pressure on the quarterback. And that was a thing that I noted on Tuesday as well, a rep where he was able to, just get right around Byers and harass DJ a little bit to force a bad throw that ended up falling incomplete. And then today I was just really impressed with his ability to stop the run. And one play that stood out, he engaged with Byers there at that tackle spot, exploding off of his out of his stance, getting really physical with Byers, driving him back probably a step or two, then sheds off the block, comes over his left side and just buries Cam Davis in the backfield for a tackle for loss so that the defense fired up. So, some shades of what we saw from Marvin Jones Jr. back in the spring, and man, the potential tandem that him and Patrick Payton could turn into. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you think about those two guys in the middle as well, Daryl Jackson and Joshua Farmer, who have done their part in the preseason to stand out. That's going to be a really fun front four to watch.
Mm-hmm. It's great to see that kind of growth there. I feel like VZ's ready to tell us everything about Jeremiah Byers and how he should be doing against Marvin Jones Jr. and Pat Payton.
It's a tough task. It's a tough task for anybody. But he still has to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple.
But he faces those guys, and then they're like, all right, we'll put Sione in there. It's just it's tough rep after every time you're going in there, you've got a quality defender matched up across from you. And they're coming to dominate that matchup. So if you don't bring it every single play, guys with the talent like Patrick Payton, and Marvin Jones Jr. and Sione, I mean, they're going to show up, and they've definitely shown up as of late.
And arguably outside of Ruben Bain in Miami, those are the best guys he's going to be going up against all year, and he does it every single week.
Dude, I was seeing on Twitter some ACC ranking thing that they did internally. They put out that Pat Payton's ranked number 22nd as the top player in the ACC into this upcoming season. I'll let the chat kind of take care of that, but takes on Pat Payton being down at number 22 on that after I think he'd be at that same realm as last year if they did the rankings. We have to check those, but another preseason. But disrespectful or not, is Pat Payton the 22nd best player in the ACC coming into 2024?
What's the rest of that list looking like?
I don't know. Have they even released the whole thing yet? If you just look at it from,
let me see,
like a reasonable take, he wasn't on the All ACC preseason team, so it makes sense that he's not inside the top 20. But the ACC does have a lot of very talented defensive linemen, and you could very reasonably argue he could be higher than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously, I think Patrick Payton overlooked a bit just because of that Jared Verse impact the last couple of years. And I think, the national media is waiting to see if he's going to be able to step into that spot and be as dominant or, close to it as Verse was.
Yeah, I'm not seeing, I don't have the list on here, but yeah, I'm just wondering, maybe we'll pull it up for next week and see where the rest of the Seminoles are ranked at as well. But always brings in some conversation, as the chat is telling us right here, not too fond of the ranking, and I don't blame them.
Well, I think it's safe to say if everything goes to plan for Patrick Payton in 2024 and, how Florida State is thinking that it's going to go, people are going to laugh at that list in a couple of months.
Yeah, he's a top 10 player. He'll jump into it, like you said, continues to make those strides. And we'll talk about him too here a little bit when we talk in the scrimmage, just some players that impress us as well. But there's some that are expected to be in that top 10 as well this upcoming season if everything goes well. There was another name I wanted to bring up today, and we're going to go to offense here, a big switch. We're going to go to the wide receiver room. Malik Benson seemed to make some big plays. We just saw on Florida State's social medias. They just posted that big play that you wrote and the observations of Malik Benson with a big grab from DJU. People were worried how healthy he was coming out of spring after that injury. Looks like everything's just been back to normal for him, and he's continuously making plays. It's almost at this point where he kind of got to get him into some bubble wrap. Don't let him get hurt kind of vibe, I feel like, D-Lou.
He's been pretty good this preseason. I will say I think he was a little bit better back in the spring. And the reason I say that is just because over the last week, give or take, I think that there's been a couple of uncharacteristic drops from Malik Benson plays that we normally see him finish. And, a couple of these have come on during one-on-ones and 7-on-7 in the red zone, a few of them even in the end zone that he had go through his hands. But he's definitely responded this week and, in particular today. You noted those plays. FSU posted that video to social media a little bit ago and actually had both of Benson's big plays in there. You were able to see the one-on-one where he beat AZ off the line of scrimmage, is working down that sideline. DJ puts a throw over the shoulder in a really good spot, and he's able to secure that there and closely contested coverage. I think it was at the beginning.
Here's one. Yep. There's Ja'Kai Douglas on Azare.
That was Jalen Brown.
Was it really?
I think so.
Was it really?
I believe so. But yeah, the Benson play, it's here at the beginning. I think you just see the catch at the end.
Okay.
Right there.
Is this it right here?
Yep, right there.
That's good coverage there from Azare.
No, AZ right on him, and the ball's just in a good spot, and Benson makes an even better play. And that's what being a defender is about sometimes. Sometimes you're in the perfect spot and the offense is just a little bit better, and that's what it was there. But yeah, then you had this one where DJ's in the pocket, a little bit pressure coming in on him. He recognizes Benson working over the middle. Benson was actually open on this play. The ball, as you guys can see, is a little bit high, but Malik Benson,
just fingertips.
He likes a
Yeah.
challenge, and he accepts a challenge, and he wins a challenge. Goes up vertical, catches that one in the middle of the field. That was a big play on the day. So, I mean, we're still seeing that playmaker mentality from Malik Benson. I mean, he's making a lot of these deep ball catches and things like that. Obviously going to be someone who's heavily featured in Florida State's offense in 2024. But I just want to see a little bit more consistency these last couple of practices of the preseason after having some of those balls bounce off his hands as of late. But I don't think it's something to be concerned about after what we saw during the spring and some of these other practices that he's been able to put together.
True. And yeah, you're right here. This is Jalen Brown here on maybe like a quick out route. I know you can't comment on everything, but is that AZ on him? I know there's an 8 here.
Yep,
but
that's
it
AZ.
looks like AZ. Yeah, that's a nice rep there from Jalen Brown, who, we were talking about wide receivers earlier. Got to see some guys want to step up and kind of jump into this rotation early and be reliable. Jalen Brown with a nice play there. Oh, wait, this doesn't go. Never mind.
What are you talking about?
Ball's coming out. That ball's coming out. Never mind. But look at the play from AZ. Let's switch this real quick.
No, it was an incredible recovery from AZ, because you see this throw, and I was across the sideline for this one. But whenever I saw it, I was like, all right, Jalen Brown touchdown. And then Logan realized, AZ somehow knocks the ball out at the very last second to force an incompletion.
That's crazy. That's actually crazy right there. What a play from him. It seems like he's just been an absolute gnat and harassing the wide receiver room. I feel like this camp, like he's been annoying as hell, and that's exactly what you want from a DB. That was
and he's letting them know about
it. He came through. Good. I like to see him. He's earned that right to do so. It's his time. There's a good comment on here from RA Next. We got about 107 people watching, only 26 likes. We appreciate it if you just hit the like button. Gets out to more FSU fans, but smack that like button. We're going to do a lot more of this fall camp talk too while Dustin's on site. But yeah, really nice play here from AZ. Shoot, I thought Jalen had it, man. LT just is nasty sometimes with that toe drag cut, man. LT's so nice with it. I wish I could replay that real quick, but this was nasty. Who's this?
That's Logan McCoy making the cut. Little short throw there, right around the line of scrimmage, as you can see.
Yeah, can you explain to us what this player is? Because I feel like we don't dive deep into it. We talk about the other guys, but can you explain who Logan McCoy is, where he was recruited from, everything, so we just understand this? Because we're going to see a lot of Logan McCoy in 2024, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Logan McCoy going to be a good one for Florida State. And whenever he first committed to the Seminoles, we were on here recapping the decision and pulled up that highlight reel of him playing in one of the 7-on-7 circuits, and he's just making some absolutely ridiculous, freaky, and athletic plays there and highlight reel catches. And I feel like you're kind of seeing the same thing here at Florida State. That athleticism going to be really useful for the Seminoles in the slot. Obviously Ja'Kai Douglas, the front runner to start at that position at this time with all of his experience in Garnet and Gold. But you did have Dustin Hill go down, and he's not going to be able to play in 2024, and that opens up an opportunity for a guy like Logan McCoy to come in. And like Elijah Moore, I feel like he's made the most of his opportunities. I think it was last Thursday, I believe I even highlighted him very heavily in one of those practice observations articles, just making plays from the beginning to end of practice. And he's another guy, not as tall as Elijah Moore, but he can still get up in the air and make some plays. Had a vertical end zone catch, had one on the sideline where he was able to go up and grab it. And, if he wouldn't have caught it, he probably would have killed me because I was standing right there. But Logan McCoy, freaky athlete, shifty, moves well in the open space, has good hands, competitor. I think there's a chance that he sees some playing time for Florida State this upcoming season.
You liked him, VZ. I thought you were talking about him a little while back, and no, it wasn't you.
No.
It wasn't VZ.
Definitely not me.
He's like, what are you talking about, man? Don't bring me into this.
Yeah, don't bring me into this crap right here. Hey, I'm just trying to say, I was about to give you some juice right there. You could have said, yeah, man, I've been calling it. I knew he'd be balling. I just gave you everything, man. It looks so smart.
Yeah, but the ones that listen to us know I don't give a damn about recruiting. So that
this isn't recruiting. It's on the field.
Yeah, but it's
on the field.
I haven't seen it on the field though, and until I see it.
Oh my god! Oh, here we go. You tell him, D-Lou, we're going to see him.
Football expert, huh?
Look at D-Lou now. Now D-Lou's upset from his on-site reporting, giving some love to Wayne McCoy, and then DZ just strikes it down. Got to see it on Saturdays. Got to see it in Dublin, Ireland before.
Would you expect it any other way?
No, I wouldn't. So we'll see. We just got to get VZ to do a practice, I guess, and then he'll hype up the freshmen.
So Wayne McCoy, just finishing this up real quick. He was a 4-star recruit out of high school, top 150 prospect in this 2024 class. Played at Miami Central High School, one of the best prep programs in the country, and they've had a lot of success as of late. He committed to FSU last spring, and there was some chatter throughout the recruitment, that he was still considering other schools, that there could be a potential flip, but Florida State kept him locked into the boat. Obviously brought in 3 more receivers alongside him, and Elijah Moore, Camden Fryer, and BJ Gibson. And I feel like all 4 of those guys have, shown up a little bit this preseason. I would say Elijah Moore and McCoy probably at the top of that group so far, but you can't count out guys like BJ Gibson and Camden Fryer either.
I love me some Camden Fryer, baby. I let him develop, but yeah, it's great to hear about Wayne McCoy, and we're going to continue to talk about this young man too impressing. And we got to go to the chat here. They're giving us all the stuff. I already have it on my notepad here, but we've had pads on for a good while now. We got to talk Daryl Jackson, and we'll, mix it in with some Joshua Farmer. But I feel like those two have had a good last couple weeks of practices, definitely since the pads have been put on. But I think, Bruce Feldman put out his freak athletes of the season, and
he does a freaks list every year of the top athletic freaks in college football. I'm trying to pull it up right now, but I think Jackson was 6th.
5th, actually, yeah. You had Daryl Jackson come in at number 5, and you had Joshua Farmer come in at number 30. So I think that's, at least from Bruce Feldman's perspective, it seems like Florida State could have 2 of the freakiest defensive tackles in all of the country. And as far as him talking about this list, he mentioned in here about Daryl Jackson, he's run 20.6 miles per hour in pads, not just in shorts and a t-shirt, in pads. He squats over 600 pounds, benches over 400 pounds, and has a NARD board score of over 2.0, which is good for tight ends and linebackers.
Which, for those that don't know what the NARD board is, it measures hamstring strength. And anything above a 2 is kind of in the explosive receiver skill set. That's the kind of explosion he's playing with.
I'd have a negative 0.7 in that.
I was thinking lower than that.
But he talked about Farmer in here as well. Said this offseason he clocked a 19.6 mile per hour time in pads, has cleaned almost 400 pounds, squatted over 600 pounds, benched over 400. And it says he's got a NARD board score of over 2.3, higher than you typically see from many skill position players. So, man, it's money year. It's money year. You can see these guys from the videos just walking in. They're built up. They're massive. Actually saw someone post a picture of those 2 playing together in high school. Obviously that picture's a couple years old by now, but they were teammates at Gadsden County High School back in the day. Yep, with Corey Fuller. And to see that picture of them now, and you put it up to what they look like, I don't know, about 4 years later or so, man.
VZ, see if you can find that and search on Twitter. It was going viral it was over FSU Twitter, and I could pull it up on the stream.
I'll find it.
Daryl Jackson, he's obviously only had less than 2 years to work with Josh Storms, but the development that we've seen from Joshua Farmer throughout these years, coming in about 230, 240 pounds, and now getting up to over that 300-pound mark, and he's moving better than ever. It's really insane to see what the strength and conditioning staff has done with a lot of these players since they arrived at Florida State, but particularly when you look at guys like Josh Farmer. You can add Patrick Payton to that list as well. He's had a crazy transformation since getting to Florida State. There's been a lot of guys. They're just they're getting better whenever they get here because of that strength and conditioning staff. Josh Storms, all those guys doing it. Yeah,
Look at that.
they don't even look like the same people. I mean,
No, Farmer. I don't even notice Farmer whatsoever in this
No.
picture. I can understand Daryl's facial features, but that's about it. This is crazy.
it's
Just like
it's nuts, man. It's like it's one of those before after P90X photos. Like,
dude, like what was Daryl Jackson eating, man? What was Daryl Jackson eating? That's what I'm thinking right here, because I used to look like a twig, and I probably look way more of a twig in my pictures here than Daryl does. But still, dude, what was Daryl Jackson eating? Can you, when you interview him next, just ask him what were you eating in high school, get to college level that boosted you up so much? Like, we need to know. So everybody
a lot of protein shakes.
Dude, I mean, it's a lot. Like, that's a lot. And you add in, you got to eat a lot of calories. Like, when you're young, you can eat as much calories as you want at that point. Definitely if you're playing football, you got practices all throughout the week. But, he had to have been killing peanut butters, like jars in classes. Had to have been spooning it and just eating jar after jar, like a jar a day, maybe. That's crazy.
But it's wild, man. They've both had their respective share of flashes this preseason. Jackson made my eyebrows raise up. I think it was yesterday, I believe, and he pursued DJ, or maybe it was Luke, or maybe it was Brock. Rushed the passer. Brock, or one of the other quarterbacks, turned and started running towards the opposite side of the field, and Daryl Jackson just comes running after him to force a bad throw. But these guys, they have a chance to be elite for Florida State in 2024, and they've waited for this opportunity for a long time, to play alongside one another once again. And, we just highlighted those developments that they've made over the last couple of years. They're both a lot different than the players that they were at Gadsden County a couple of years ago. And they had that opportunity taken away from them in 2023 with Daryl Jackson dealing with all that BS waiver stuff with the NCAA. But, they understand they've got one more chance, and they're doing everything they can to take advantage of that, because frankly, I think this is probably the last year that we'll see Joshua Farmer and Daryl Jackson and Garnet and Gold if everything goes to plan this season.
Yep, as it should be. As it should be. This is now their time to shine. It's time to go in and wreak havoc. And I think these guys see themselves, they want to get to that next level. They have that hunger inside of them. And it's now just about showing it to us on Saturdays. And that's something that I'm keeping a close eye on. I know the talent's there and they're absolute freak athletes. It's just having the mentality of what you saw Braden Fisk have. And I wonder if I'd like to see Fisk, have them pick Brandon Fisk's brain there, because he really took it to a different notch on that latter half of the season and understood the assignment. And that was just a perfect example for him. Jared Verse on a different level. Braden Fisk didn't have a ton of time, and he came in as a starter. This is Joshua Farmer's first time being a starter. Daryl Jackson's first time being a starter at FSU. Farmer's had, he's had that. But
he started every game last year, except for the bowl game.
Fabo and Braden. Well, I guess if Fabo,
he started over Fabo.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels like this is now Farmer's line, I guess you could say, and now it's time to take it to the next level and take it seriously, man. And go get that bag afterward, but make sure you're getting what you need to do this season. And I've really liked what I've seen from Farber and Daryl Jackson. It just feels like things are going how it should be, and also too some younger guys behind him that Adam Fuller's been impressed with, and also Mike Norvell too, that we'll talk about when we talk about scrimmage stuff.
Yeah, and I just think the big thing for Daryl Jackson and Joshua Farmer, obviously they've got the ability to be dominant players between the lines, but I just want to see that consistent, leadership, keeping their teammates engaged, locked in, being those type of guys, not only now during the preseason, but also throughout the year as well. Them, and there's some other guys on the defense as well, AZ, Fentrell, Shaheem, DJ Lundy, Patrick Payton. I mean, there's some other guys, but Daryl Jackson and Joshua Farmer, they need to have that voice in the locker room, because I feel like they're the type of guys that teammates are going to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Speaking of players listening to, let's talk about the defensive back room and go to Shaheem Brown along with the rest of this DB room that looked like they had a good day over there in Duval, locking things down. We were already talking about AZ and Fentrell Cypress, but I feel like all over the board there was some plays being made against the quarterbacks today.
All over the board. I felt like it was probably one of the better outings for the defensive backfield this preseason, and that's a little hard to say because they've just been so good throughout. For the most part. But man, there was a stretch in one-on-ones and 7-on-7 where I think you could count the amount of completed passes on one hand. The defensive, and it wasn't because the quarterbacks were off target or anything like that. The defensive backs were just that good in their coverage. Getting hands on passes to cause deflections. We also had a pick six there in the end zone in one-on-ones. But yeah, from the top to the bottom of the unit, like you said, Logan, we talked about AZ. Then you can go to Shaheem Brown. He had a really nice deflection covering Deuce over the middle where it felt like he was literally attached to Deuce's body. Edwin Joseph, he had another deflection today. Guy who's popped up recently, 3 interceptions over the last 4 practices last week. And then Ricky Knight jammed Elijah Moore at the line of scrimmage. Didn't even let him get off the route. I mean, the play just kind of ended there at the line because he jammed him so hard. DBs were celebrating. Conrad Hussey looked like there was going to be a completion to BJ Gibson over the middle. BJ stopped the route. Hussey kind of went by him a little bit. Ball started coming in. Hussey recovered so fast. I have no idea how. Jumped back into the play, punched the ball out from in front of BJ. Charles Lester, Earl Little Jr. had some deflections. Ashland Barker created an incompletion against Amari Williams in the end zone, then almost had an interception late in practice on a play, pass bounced out of his hands. But walk-on Christian White undercut a route in one-on-ones for a pick in the end zone, took it back the opposite direction. Whole defensive backfield was running after him. Just felt like from the top to the bottom of that group, whether it was the starters, whether it was young guys, that defensive backfield, man, locked in. Patrick Surtain has them playing at a very, very high level right now, and I think that says a lot about this defense. Bernardo Green, Jarian Jones, Akeem Dent, no longer here in Garnet and Gold, but still each day this defensive backfield coming out there and competing. You've got your veterans there in that cornerback room, but these young guys behind him. I mean, Quindarius Jones, we mentioned Edwin Joseph, Jabril Rawls, a trio of, I guess, some redshirt freshmen, some sophomores, but, second-year players at Florida State have been really impressive this preseason. And I think even though you have some youth there at cornerback, I mean, those guys are going to end up being reliable throughout the season. They're probably not going to be their very best in game 1, but when we look at game 6 and 7, and then we get to game 12 and 13, I feel like there's a chance they're playing at a really high level.
That's great to hear. And too, Demetrius asking here, just that competition between Conrad Hussey and Devontae Brown. You don't have to, say who's going to be the winner, who's winning that right now. But like you can share though how that competition's going and who's maybe has a stride up ahead than one of them.
Yeah, I think it's similar still to how we were talking about it before the preseason started, where obviously Conrad Hussey, if he reaches that potential and is just more consistent play to play, he really raises what Florida State's defense could be in 2024. But Devontae Brown, I mean, it's been solid in its own right. He's got a ton of experience at the college level, played at UCF and Miami. I mean, a veteran who's got a lot of snaps to his name, probably a little bit more of a safer option. And, Devontae Brown, someone who we talked about last week, he's been bringing a lot of big hits this preseason, showing up well. Conrad Hussey, getting involved too. And you see that physicality from him, those ball skills where, like we talked about, he's able to get in and somehow make some of these deflections where it seems like they're going to be completions. I would say they're both doing their part right now. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that either is ahead of the other. I mean, this is still a competition, in my opinion, that we're right into the middle of. And I think you got to throw Amarian Cooper into that mix as well. It feels like all 3 of those guys are really competing for that safety spot opposite of Shaheem at the moment.
Good stuff there. Good stuff. You'll be there at practice too tomorrow. It seemed like defense had some really nice plays today and were impressing. Is there anything offensively before we jump into this scrimmage talk? And if there's not much, there's still another day and we'll get the thoughts on the second day of Jacksonville, because we've already gone about 50 minutes all into into the practices. I mean, we could always just sit here and go 3 hours, but I think at that point we'd have to get some sponsors. Let's just be honest here. I mean, if we can get some paid sponsorships, then we'll do this however
Yeah, I
long
mean,
y'all want to go.
just real quick, we can go through. It was an up and down day for the most part from that offense. I mean, the defense, the backfield, and defensive line just really competitive, really tough to beat consistently. On Wednesday, DJ did have a really good throw to Amari Williams down the seam where he got the ball over the linebacker right into the tight end's arms, and Mike Norvell came running over after and said, "Great throw, DJ, great throw." And I was really happy with that read there. You had Lawrence Toafili make one of the tougher catches of the day. DJ working out of the pocket, let loose a really strong throw to the sideline, and Toafili somehow able to corral it with a defender all over him there. And someone else that I wanted to note, I guess we're sticking with Amari Williams because he was highlighted by the coaching staff for his blocking effort once again during one of those 3-on-2 drills. And there was a drill that the tight ends do during kind of like the position specific periods. So whenever the tight ends are just working through things by themselves, not with the rest of the team, and all the units at that point are broken up and going through different things. But there's like a drill where the tight ends lay out 5 cones and they kind of run laterally between these cones, and they're working on different routes. And in the middle of the drill, they'll have one of the assistant coaches standing there with a big pad on his hand, and as a tight end cuts around this cone, they throw the pass to him, and as the ball arrives, they get smacked in the face with a pad, which I thought that was hilarious. But so some of the guys obviously dropped a couple of those passes, but Amari Williams, I mean, just looked really smooth in that drill, and it was a really funny time. Preston Brady, tight end's assistant, was bringing some good energy there and trying to get in the guys' heads while they were going through that drill. And then, we mentioned the move by LaWayne McCoy to get some extra space on that short play and that FSU highlight video. And you also had Kyle Morlock coming down with a contested catch and one-on-ones, which, we've seen often this preseason, but it was good to see today because he had a pass drop off his hands a couple of reps before. So, I mean, overall, it was a decent day for the offense. Definitely not one of their better days of camp, but we'll see if they're able to respond on Thursday.
Whew, I love it, man. I mean, like I said, we could just talk fall camp and just jump into full discussion. I mean, we practically do Dustin forever on the phone. We're just chatting it up, or if I'm at training camp, we're exchanging notes on things going on. But it's just the fun part of start figuring out the identity of this team. And this is where we're at. Like you said earlier in the show, we're about to jump into game week kind of prep here soon, ladies and gentlemen. This is flying by. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, I'm not ready for football season and work wise. We've got to get some things going here. We got to get some preseason meetings going and everything. So not ready on that end, but just like off of just angst and like excitement, I'm super stoked for football to be back on my television on about a majority of the weekdays now. So let's jump into some scrimmage stuff, and then maybe we'll have an open discussion too on what we're seeing on the NFL side of things. But we had Florida State jump into a first live scrimmage inside Doak Campbell Stadium this last Saturday evening. We talked with Mike Norvell and Adam Fuller afterward. Kind of what were some of your takeaways, D-Lu? I know, Visa, you probably saw some tweets here and there as well. But, to me, it seemed like, once again, the defense had a big night. And that's kind of been his theme coming from Mike Norvell the last couple of times we've been talking with him. Defense had a good night, but, DJ also had a really long, I think it was a 20-plus play series with Samuel Singleton, your guy, Visa, who we're about to talk about here. I want to bring him up. Samuel Singleton absolutely bringing the power on that drive, and also to ending off the series with a touchdown. 3 defenders in the backfield, and Samuel Singleton somehow slipped away and got into the end zone. And Adam Fuller, not happy with that, but he did show some love to the young running back. He was not a fan. He was pissed about bad tackling as well. Wasn't happy with that, and obviously that showed there in that touchdown from Samuel Singleton. But have a day, young man. So some ups and downs, kind of like what we saw with the offense today in practice, but the defense came to play, and that usually happens in the first scrimmages for anybody.
just inconsistency. And you could hear it from Mike Norvell and Adam Fuller. It just seemed like the fundamentals, there were some lapses there at certain points. Logan, you bring up the tackling on the defensive side. I think Mike Norvell brought up drops a couple of times as far as the offense. I mean, it just seemed like that sort of scrimmage, maybe didn't go as good as Florida State wanted it to go on Saturday night, but it still seemed like a pretty competitive evening for the most part. And worth noting, Mike Norvell mentioned that Patrick Payton, Joshua Farmer, Daryl Jackson, Darius Washington, Maurice Smith, and Jeremiah Byers all kind of had their snap counts limited during the scrimmage, just because Florida State wanted to see some of these newer and younger guys get more work in. They're pretty comfortable with what they have in those 6 veterans that I just mentioned. So I mean, maybe that had some of the reason that things were, not as clean necessarily as Florida State wanted them to be. As you said, Logan, the offense did have that one shining moment where they're able to command a 20-plus play drive. I think Mike Norvell or Adam Fuller said it was 22, 23 plays, and then Samuel Singleton, a really nice run there on that drive. And I think everyone saw the highlight clip going around of Elijah Moore's crazy catch that some are saying is a little similar to what Keon Coleman was able to do last year. So you did see some flashes from some of these young guys, and I think that was pretty important. Mike Norvell mentioned that he was happy with the way that DJ was able to command the offense during the scrimmage. I think you're still seeing some improvement, some strides there from the veteran quarterback who's learning his 3rd offense in as many seasons. So, it's a first scrimmage. It is what it is. Florida State, they're going to be back out there, this Saturday morning for their 2nd scrimmage of the spring. We'll hear from Mike Norvell and not sure who else just yet, around 11:30 a.m. on Saturday to see how that goes. And I would imagine they're going to push these guys to be even better than last week.
That's a nasty catch there from Elijah, from Brock there. Looks like from the 50 on the Seminole head, and just a one-handed snag. And he's been making those plays from what we've been hearing from you and everything. This kid's brought the heat, and just to see it happen in a scrimmage just goes to tell you that he's came here to play, and you love every bit of that. But yeah, that's a nice snag. That is a pretty snag right there. Just some other takeaways too from what Adam Fuller and both also too Mike Norvell talked about. Samuel Singleton. I asked Mike Norvell, what are we seeing from Samuel Singleton? Could he jump into this rotation, because that room is so heavy in talent, and you've already got your top 2 guys with Roydell and Lawrence Toafili. Can he jump in here and get in the rotation? And there's some expectation for him to get some playing time this upcoming season, just because of what the versatility he brings. And we actually talked with Samuel Singleton earlier this week, and everybody like us, we talked about his speed, but we just heard about in the first scrimmage, he brought that power, that strength, and that it just shows kind of how the skill set grows from him, just outside of just the speed that we kind of think of him as. And I'm wondering if you've seen that kind of so far in fall camp, D-Lou, up close and personal.
Yeah, if you listen to me talk on this podcast, we actually brought it up last week about some tough running from Samuel Singleton, running through an arm tackle on a run up the middle where Ashton Barker came in and, just wasn't physical enough, kind of bounced off of Singleton, fell to the ground. He was able to explode through for a big play. And you had another one where he caught a pass out of the backfield, started working towards the sideline, broke away from a linebacker, and then just absolutely ran over a defensive back on the sideline. So, that was something I brought up on the last episode. And, frankly, it was a little bit surprising because, as you noted, Logan, we think about Samuel Singleton in that running back room and that strength as being one of his being one of his main strengths. And then you go up and you see him with some of these tough runs and breaking tackles, running over defenders. There's some versatility there, and there's a lot to like. He was a guy last year, somewhat limited at times during practice, just with like some bumps and bruises and things. But, he put together some good practices back in the spring, has continued to stand out amongst that running back room so far this preseason. And he's competing with some very talented running backs and some veteran running backs, 3 seniors, for snaps, and Jalen Lucas as well, some of those true freshmen. So we'll see how big of a role he ultimately ends up playing. But I think a guy who's making plays like that, you've got to at least give him an opportunity to see if he can get it going on a Saturday.
You got to give him a shot. You got to give Veazey. This is your guy, even though you haven't. Have you seen him in person though? Could you say that? You just seen him on Saturdays.
No, you saw him at the ACC championship from the press box with those binoculars.
That's all you needed. Probably didn't even know he saw him. Probably didn't even know. He probably didn't even look at him once. But at least you were there and you could say your eyes looked at him potentially. But yeah, same with Singleton's been nice, man. Another thing too, I want to bring up as well. Mike Norvell said that he liked how active the pass rush was during the scrimmage, but still some work that needs to be done to improve that unit. And there were also some guys too that didn't see full playing time. Some guys were limited. Hey, Mike Norvell said Darius Washington, Maurice Smith, Jeremiah Byers, Patrick Payne, Daryl Jackson, Joshua Farmer. We're all
he doesn't listen.
Like limited on the snap counts. Were you saying that earlier?
Yeah, like 3 minutes ago.
Who else could we say was limited? Probably, can we say Dustin Hill? I mean, obviously he was limited. He couldn't play. So let me just add Dustin Hill on there. Although I did see a video of Dustin Hill catching some passes. I can switch it up real quick and keep the viewers alive. Dustin Hill catching some passes from the quarterbacks. I know you didn't film that. It wasn't you, but it's on social media. And
I have filmed
he's
it.
He's just standing there and he's catching. But good to see Dustin Hill. I think I'm going to go ahead and say it. We got to say now we're going to see Dustin Hill in 2024.
No, we're not, dude. Shut up.
No. Don't start the Aaron Rodgers.
It's a long postseason, gentlemen.
You're gonna get me
a run.
You're gonna get me in trouble tomorrow.
It's not gonna get you in trouble. It's not gonna get you in trouble. It's not getting you in trouble. We're gonna see. That's my own guess. I'm not look at you're not telling me anything.
Even Dylan said it.
Oh, boo, 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 boo. No, I think that's just my guess. My guess. I think we might. Who knows? You never know. You haven't even told me any jack crap of Dustin Hill, so I'm just going off of that little video there. He's got a helmet on. He's got pads on. Obviously, he's not running or anything. He's got his jersey on.
He's got a jersey on with nothing on under it. No football pants. I mean,
does he have a helmet on?
Sometimes.
All I need.
It's not like he's sprinting up and down the field or anything.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't say he's playing in September, October. I said
I think he's just trying
2024 goes into December, ladies and gentlemen. Florida State's able to make a run in the college football playoff. I think the unicorn might come out. I don't know. And I'm hoping for it. At least on this show, I'm giving optimistic thoughts on him. I'm hoping he has a speedy recovery.
I'd rather temper the expectations.
Well, I would temper it until you find out Florida State's wide receiver room's in trouble and some regard. I'm not saying it's in trouble, but it's going to discussion we're going to have in a couple of weeks, D-Lou, potentially. If you keep scaring me.
But I really think Dustin Hill, he's just doing his part to try and impact the team and contribute where he can while he's dealing with his injury, Just kind of being a guy over there to catch passes for the quarterbacks whenever they're going through those early drills in practice. And, you see him talking with these young wide receivers. Mike Norvell actually brought him up earlier. As one of the guys who's been close with these freshman wide receivers and helping them as they translate to the college level and to Florida State. So it seems like he's just doing his part to be a good teammate. And, I personally don't think that we're going to end up seeing Dustin Hill in 2024. I would love to be wrong, but I don't know.
And Veazey too, probably. You would like that. One thing that I want to take away, though, from Adam Fuller, he was talking about the defensive line, and he really likes what's behind Daryl Jackson and Joshua Farmer. That's what I was asking him, because that's something that was a big topic for us as well. Who's going to be some solid depth pieces that can go in there whenever Daryl and Joshua Farmer need some time off from a series? But I like from what he was telling me that he has been very pleased with the rotation behind those guys. He says that he feels like there's 6 defensive tackles that can rotate this upcoming season for the Florida State Seminoles, and they feel really good about what they have behind Farmer and Daryl Jackson, and that makes me feel better. And I can truly tell that Adam Fuller truly thinks that way, and that means that we're seeing some signs from some of those youngsters as well, D-Lou.
Is this when you want me to say something?
If you saw something that hopefully the defensive line behind those two guys are impressing, hopefully, and there is some depth piece, because you need that this upcoming season, or you're in some you need to have some depth pieces.
Well, you're continuing to see that growth from Daniel Lyons, and I do feel like KJ Sampson, a guy who has developed a lot over the last year, feels like the coaching staff has been really happy with his progress, consistently getting into the backfield, putting himself around the football, had a pass deflection as well at the line of scrimmage the other day, and I mean, just someone that plays with a lot of hustle. If he's in and you have a run that goes down the right side for 20 yards, you look up, KJ Sampson's probably going to be one of those defenders who's hustling to try and stop that big play from developing. And Grady Kelly, someone that I haven't necessarily seen flash a ton this preseason, but it just feels like he's consistent when he's in there. He knows his assignment, pretty solid there at the point of attack, and actually beat Julian Armella today, back-to-back reps in that 3-on-2 drill where he was just kind of able to drive Armella off the football there and get into the backfield. And then Tomiwa Durje, still a little bit raw. He's got a ways to go. His best football certainly ahead of him, and he was someone that Florida State thought might make more of an impact at defensive end until the spring. And they saw some of those developments there and realized, hey, he's probably going to be more useful along the interior. And man, I really like what I'm seeing from this kid. He reminds me a little bit. He's got one of those builds. You see him walk into practice and you're like, all right, that guy's a football player. Like, reminds me a little bit of Ayobami Tafase with his frame, where he's just a really filled out and muscular guy, an imposing frame, if you will, and very solid athlete. Feels like he's consistently getting into the backfield, putting pressure on the quarterback, and also in running plays as well. Getting back there, making some tackles along the line of scrimmage or in the backfield. Still making some mistakes as he transitions to Florida State and this defensive scheme, and also playing a little bit of a new position. And I think in his case, it's important to remember that this is a guy who's a redshirt sophomore, but he's also at his third school in 3 years. Began his career at Kentucky, played last year at West Virginia, and now is at Florida State. So he's had to learn a lot in a short time. And, I think that's also it's been beneficial, but also a little tough as well during this transition to Florida State. But I like what I'm seeing from Tomiwa. I feel like he's popped up, and he's going to play a role on this defense. Don't be surprised if you're hearing his name a decent amount in 2024.
Some other things just outside of To the Scrimmage, we got to talk with Mike Norvell, and it's rare to do this whenever Florida State had to move the Zoom interviews onto there. So I had a chance to jump on there and ask a few questions. But Mike Norvell mentioned on the practice earlier this week this would have been Tuesdays. Whoa. Oh, your thing moved there. Kind of freaked me out. I thought you were having an earthquake, Dustin, over there in Jacksonville.
I've got my laptop propped up on my suitcase because this desk is like low down. So I
was wondering how you're going to do that earlier.
To give me to put me right here in front of the camera, so you're not just looking up at my chin.
Nice, yeah, because we don't want to see that.
I didn't want that angle. I didn't want people to have to deal with that.
No, probably wouldn't have been the best one. But no, Mike Norvell mentioned earlier on Monday, talking about Jaylen Brown and him having his best day since arriving in Tallahassee. I thought that was worth mentioning too. Talked about Shyheim Brown, said he thinks he's playing at a very high level. I think this is also when I asked him about Samuel Singleton. And Sam Singleton, he said he's a very talented back, speed, explosiveness. I believe Singleton's going to jump into potentially that rotation and contribute to the team this upcoming season. I think maybe the biggest one here is coming from Alex Atkins, Florida State's offensive line / offensive coordinator, saying that the offensive line will absolutely rotate players this upcoming season on the trenches. Takeaways from that, VZ? I'll ask you first. He said that Florida State's going to be rotating like we've seen in the previous years, definitely last year, and they kind of had to at the point of the health situation. But right now you have a healthy squad going into the season, and we've been discussing that heavily on the show this offseason. Not a major fan of the rotations and having to do that as much, but seems like Atkins feels comfortable with doing this going into another year after what they kind of learned last year. and it wasn't a great unit last year.
They're
Yeah.
beat the shit.
Yeah, and you'd have to hope that Richie Leonard and TJ Ferguson are better than Casey Roddick was last year, because Roddick was really inconsistent last season, as well as with the injuries to Maurice Smith, Robert Scott. Really, everybody along the offensive line was beat up at some point. But, I don't think rotation is necessarily a bad thing for this unit, because you have 7, 8, maybe even 9 guys that you feel pretty good about if they're thrown out there next season. I don't see anything wrong with it, especially if Alex Atkins is confident in that group.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It all depends on health at the end of the day for this unit always.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what it depends on. But yeah. I just like consistency there on a line. I think anybody does. But I guess it depends on.
I think part of it will be matchup dependent as well.
Yeah.
What does the team need most going into a certain game? Because that's the good thing about having so much experience and so much variety on this offensive line, is you can mix and match guys depending on who they're playing, and really get the best out of that unit depending on who they're playing.
I agree with that. I think Florida State, they've got a quality starting 5 that they're going to be fielding, but then there's also 3, 4, 5 guys behind them that you can sprinkle into this lineup at different points of the season to kind of help out. And like Austin said, matchup dependent, team dependent, player dependent. If you're going to run the ball more, you might have a certain group of guys in there. If you're planning to throw the ball a little bit more this game, you might have a different group. We might see some movement there with the tackles between Darius Washington, Jeremiah Byers, and Robert Scott. And then I think inside, too, we'll see where Jacob Rizzi ultimately ends up. He's been taking snaps in there at center and guard so far. But as far as the 3 guys that were competing at those 2 spots in the spring with TJ Ferguson, Richie Leonard, and Keandre Jones, I mean, all of those guys are going to play in 2024. Maurice Smith in there at center, obviously. Maybe Jacob Rizzi can spell him every now and then. And I think Andre Otto, a redshirt freshman, potentially could get into the mix at that center spot. He was someone that Norvell was talking up pretty highly after practice on Wednesday. It feels like he's moving in the right direction as of late. So I just think it's important to remember this offensive line isn't last year's offensive line. The biggest thing is keeping them healthy, because a lot of these guys have dealt with injuries throughout their careers. And like Logan said, it bogged down the play of that unit at the tail end of that 2023 season last year. I mean, with so many guys nursing things and really just trying to make it to game day at a certain point. Florida State hoping with this larger rotation and some more guys behind these starters, they're not going to have to deal with that as much in 2024. Keep some of that wear and tear off.
I wouldn't be surprised to see 5, 6, or 7 different starting lineups this year on that starting 5. And for once, it wouldn't be a bad thing with this unit. I mean, you talk about some of those late Rick Trickett offensive lines, and you're seeing how many different combinations they're having. You're like, oh my God, what is this? But now it's somewhat a good thing.
I want to jump into one last thing, at least from my end, off of just scrimmage / in the practices this week. Talking with Mike Norvell, he mentioned Ryan Fitzgerald and the rain, the nastiness that was coming in through Debbie, the hurricane. Ryan Fitzgerald asked Mike Norvell and the staff to take things outdoors and go kick a game-winning field goal to end off practice, and he nailed it. And he said, Mike Norvell said it was rainy, windy. We put him in a lot of uncomfortable positions. They've been doing this a lot during camp to all the kickers. We've been seeing the videos. We shared one here on the stream a week or 2 ago. But, the whole getting the kicker freaked out a little bit, get him in his mentals, get him all wired out, just freaked the F out. And then getting him out there in the rain, which Ryan asked for. He wanted to be put in this situation. He nailed it. I think that's a great sign for your veteran kicker, who I thought had an excellent season last year and put Florida State into a security blanket in games. And you would love to see that happen again this upcoming season as they try to shoot for another college football playoff. Can't say appearance, but run. Try to get to that. Try to get that bid to whatever the college football playoff thing is nowadays in order to get in there.
He's been pretty good this preseason for the most part. I mean, you're not seeing a ton of misses in those live rep opportunities. Now, I will say we had one go wide right today from 45 yards, but then Fitzgerald responded by making a 51-yard kick later in practice, so that's some room to spare. And then behind him,
Nice.
I mean, Jake Weinberg, the true freshman, likely next up for Florida State at kicking spot. I feel like he's been pretty good. I mean, probably right there with Fitzgerald kicking this preseason. He's got a good distance on him. You know, we showed that pressure kick that he made last week. FSU football actually put out another video. Ryan Fitzgerald made one of those as well with the whole team in front of him and doing all that crazy stuff. So I mean, that's really good to see from these kickers, especially something that we're always not diving deep into the special teams unit every Wednesday. But something that could play a role in that is going to play a role in the overall success of this unit is that long snapper position. And they're replacing James Rosenberry after 3 years at Florida State. Seems right now Ohio State transfer Mason Arnold going to man that spot for FSU. But I mean, you have to think over these last 3 years, Ryan Fitzgerald and Alex Mastermano, they've gotten really comfortable with Rosenberry, and I mean they've gotten that chemistry down. So I mean that's certainly been a little bit of a change for them to deal with in the spring and fall. And it's not something that you notice if it's done right, but if it goes wrong, it'll pop up real quick.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why Coach JP, there's like in the chat here from Go Noles 45 talking about Coach JP, Florida State special teams coach, and then also to defensive ends coach. He does a really good job with these special teams, and it is not an easy job. Definitely under Mike Norvell and the importance that it is to him.
I think really that whole coaching staff, because JP, he does have that title as special teams coordinator, but during these special teams period, I mean, the majority of the assistants have some type of assignment during these different special teams drills and periods. It could be the kick return unit, the kickoff unit, no matter what it is. I mean, everyone's kind of got a role here.
Gunners. I think Ron Dugan's is on the Gunners.
Yeah, like Florida State, they put so much of an emphasis on special teams in these practices, and we've seen it win games for this team, especially these last 2 years. You think about what they've been able to do in the return game, blocking field goals. Everyone will point back to Shaheem Brown, 2022, winning that game against LSU. Special teams is a major point of emphasis for Florida State. And with all the work that they put in there, I think it's going to be once again a very productive side of the ball for the Seminoles in 2024 that could ultimately win you a couple football games.
Well, we've been on here for an hour and 15, and we could keep on chit-chatting. Time has already flown by, but I just wanted to ask you guys too if you've seen anything NFL-wise from some of the NFL Noles out there. I think it's just been consistent now for Keon Coleman and Josh Allen to make some big plays in camp. I want to mention too, real quick, outside here in Tampa, we've got Kalen DeLoach jumping into the second team quick. I mean, that happened quick. He's been getting a lot of time with the ones when Levante David has kind of a vet day, or they're not going to, put him in there as much on team and 11 on 11. Who steps in? It is Kalen DeLoach, and Sebastian Dennis, who is a former Pittsburgh linebacker, very talented too. He's just been dealing with some health stuff and not being able to see the field as much. So it's allowed for Kalen DeLoach to jump in and get all these kind of opportunities. And he's been thrown on blitzes from Todd Bowles. I actually got to see Rob DeLoach. Shout out to him. Got to meet up and hang out with him a little bit before watching his son begin practice. And it's been really fun to see him just grow. And I think we were all shocked that he wasn't drafted in this year's NFL draft. We thought he'd be the one out of that linebacker room getting drafted first. But, now he's making everything. He's taking everything to his advantage and learning from Levante David and KJ Britt. Like, that's just such a phenomenal room to be in and consume knowledge as being a linebacker. But there's some cool stuff going on for a lot of the NFL Noles right now, gentlemen. It's really fun to watch these guys ball in training camp. Johnny Wilson. I don't know if y'all been seeing those tweets, but Johnny Wilson's been making some big grabs up there in Philly.
He could be wide receiver 3 for them if you believe all the tweets going on in Philly. And, we talked about this when he was drafted. If he can break into that starting rotation at least and put him with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert at tight end, that's a pretty scary and freaky receiving talent.
And that's why we were laughing before the draft where people were talking about, will Johnny Wilson maybe move to tight end at the NFL level. And you just look at those combine testing numbers and you just chuckle because you're like, there's no way. I mean, he just does too many freaky things at that size and at that speed to put him inside. I feel like, I mean, you've got to at least start him out at wide receiver, and it sounds like it's paid off for Philadelphia so far. He could play a major role for a team that is going to be pushing for a playoff berth and potentially a Super Bowl run this upcoming season. Then you go over to Kalen. I don't think it's any surprise. I mean, once he went undrafted and got picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, felt like a perfect opportunity. The Buccaneers typically each year, a couple undrafted free agents end up breaking through and making that roster, and they've had success with those type of guys under Jason Light. And I just felt like that was going to continue with Kalen, and especially with his mindset and how hard that he worked at Florida State, what he did in Tallahassee over his years with the program. He's got that chip on his shoulder, and even though he's a little bit undersized by NFL linebacker standards, I mean, the heart, the physicality that he plays with, and obviously that athleticism and playmaking ability, I don't think anyone is surprised at all that he's standing out for the Buccaneers.
And I know it's easy to show love to the East Coast guys, but I feel like we got to go out west and show a lot of love to Renardo Green, who has broken into the starting rotation for the San Francisco 49ers. Today alone, running with the first team, he had 3 pass breakups and a blocked field goal. And he's been drawing comparisons to Diamador Lenore, who's been great for San Francisco the last few years. He's making a huge impression on the 49ers. And, he's someone they needed. They push him outside and they push Lenore on the inside when they go in the nickel. And that's a pretty fun secondary.
And we actually had some preseason football last week. First game of the year, the what's it called, Hall of Fame game between the Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears. And that allowed us, no longer a rookie, but that allowed us to get a look at Cam Akers for the first time in 269 days. Tore his Achilles for the second time. I guess it was on the opposite leg, but second Achilles tear that he's had to deal with during his career last year while playing for the Minnesota Vikings. Rehabbed this entire offseason. Didn't get picked up early in free agency and then landed with the Houston Texans in July following the workout. So, I mean, he was able to get some time in during that Hall of Fame game. Didn't have the gaudiest of stats, but he had a couple big moves, catch out of the backfield that we're going to see here, where he put a nice little spin move together to get a first down, had C.J. Stroud, franchise quarterback for the Texans, absolutely fired up. And then to cap off this same drive later on, Akers able to catch a pass out of the backfield for a touchdown with his new teams. I mean, it's got to be a great feeling, coming off that injury to produce a little bit in your first opportunity with the Texans. I think Akers, he's going to have to do a little bit of work with his team and show some things these next couple of weeks to ultimately make the 53-man roster. But a really good start for the former Florida State star. And like I said, great to see with him coming off his second Achilles tear in 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah. We've got some 3 years. 3 years. Yeah.
Coming off his second Achilles tear in years.
I mean, yeah, you just got to point it there. I mean, 2 Achilles. Jesus.
It's a lot. That's a
lot.
Just
running. It's crazy you're running right now.
Yeah. Especially, and much less running, but being a running back in the National Football League, 2 Achilles tears and still producing. That's insane.
Props to him. Props.
We do have someone in the comments asking about Braden Fisk and Jared Verse. Verse has been Verse, as you can expect, being loud, being abrasive, but that's what he does best. And he's been getting after it with the Rams. Fisk has been dealing with an injury. McVay made fun of him because he thought it was a thumb blister, but they actually said it's a blister the entire length of his foot. So he's been out with that for the last few days. But other than that, yeah.
Dry feet, dry air over there.
How do you get that? Yeah.
I have no idea.
That thing up, baby.
I saw that while I was going through. I'm like, that sounds painful.
That does.
Write an article on that stat.
Yeah. Jared Verse, Andrew. Get it in. I got to get that.
Braden Fisk feet pics, please.
Okay, let's not do that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now I saw a video of Jared Verse chirping.
They released like a full 3-minute video of him chirping, like earlier in the week or late last week, and I'm like, yeah, this is Verse. This is typical Verse.
To it. It's just like this is what we've been used to since actually having him on here, the Spear, when he was in his car, and you could just tell the kind of energy that he was going to be bringing to practices. Kind of hinted at it multiple times, and now he's over on the NFL side and doing it. And I mean, the NFL films, the Rams. I mean, they're going to eat up all the content that both him and also to Braden Fisk are giving them. It seems like those two have become really close, best friends. But it's fun being able to cover Cam Akers, man, because we're over there at Texans game day now. So watching him grow, and there's a chance for him if he can stick around and do good things, man. That's a Super Bowl contending team there that D'Amico Ryans has built. So we'll see what Cam Akers can make out of it. I see Jameis Winston's over here racing Mike Vrabel over there, and before practice, or not, like it's in the practices, and it's whenever Jameis is kind of warming up and getting some early tosses in, and they got to go to the other side of the field. Those two are racing one another to get set up to face the other side. It's just feels like Mike Norvell and what he does in all his racing, but it's just hilarious. So it's always fun to see Jameis Winston run. Let's just all be honest here. It's hilarious. Yeah. It's a weird kind of form. One day we'll get him on the show so we can go in depth about the run and everything. But he's just a funny guy overall. But just to see him run and race Vrabel, who's Vrabel is huge. People don't understand. Like Vrabel is a monster, former player,
former linebacker, I believe.
Yeah.
Like he's gigantic.
But he's like 6'5", 250. Like he's a big dude.
He's no joke, that's for sure. But looks like Jameis having a lot of fun over there in Cleveland. So, I mean, good to see for him. You know, we'll see how the Deshaun Watson stuff works out. From what I've seen so far, it seems like it's been pretty up and down camp for Deshaun. Some good days, some really bad. So, I mean, you never know. You know, Jameis going to continue to wait in the wings, and if he gets his opportunity, he's going to do his best to take advantage of it. But also just him continuing to develop that chemistry with his teammates in Cleveland. I saw some video today where a couple of his teammates were messing around with him a little bit. You know, he's just that lighthearted guy who just rolls with the punches. So excited to see what he can do in Cleveland.
And not only that, but there's a lot of rumors that they might be acquiring Brandon Ayuk soon, which, depending on if they keep Amari Cooper or not in that trade, that could be pretty fun offense to play in.
Y'all are hilarious. You're just doing that on purpose.
That's the rumor. It's them and the Patriots. That's the rumor.
It got cut off today. You're late. You're playing too much of that video game. You know exactly where he's headed. He's headed to where he wants to get a ring, and San Francisco's not going to give it to him.
You think the Steelers are getting a ring?
I've got a ring defense. I've got a defense that will do it. Now I've got to figure out my quarterback. And ladies and gentlemen, we got a competition.
You got a competition because the quarterback you went and got can't practice.
Yep, just like my guy right here, Davion Colston here on YouTube. Ayuk is a Steeler, and that's completely right. We're just waiting. Just got to figure out the money situation, but Pickens and it'll be Pickens and Ayuk in this offense moving forward, and looking forward to it. Behind two stellar running backs, big moves on the offensive line. I feel confident. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, whoever.
How
you shouldn't be.
Feel good.
Did you watch football last year?
I'm not going to judge anything of someone else in another organization. I'm going to trust my team and develop in there.
Yeah, the one that picked a guy in the first round with tiny hands.
Kenny Pickett's gone. We're over that. I mean, I don't even
one of my hands is bigger than both of Kenny Pickett's hands.
So that's probably true. That's probably true. He's no longer on my roster, though. No longer on my roster, so don't matter anymore. But VZ definitely tried to, see what he could do with me. He's coming to Pittsburgh, so can't wait. Should happen tomorrow, if not Friday, and if not, it's going to happen next week. So I'm looking forward to it. Going to be a fun season ahead for me and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anything else NFL side before we jump out of here? Before I start looking at some Justin Fields highlights for the rest of the night.
Only the things I've seen, Trey Benson's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start with Arizona, just competing with a deep running back room. Apparently, Taylor Bethune, haven't really seen anything on him. Same with Akeem Dent. Seems like he's been dealing with some injuries and just came back recently. Nothing new on that front if you've followed Akeem Dent's career. I haven't seen much of Jordan Travis. Seems like he's still limited for right now.
I think he's on the non-football injury list, if I am correct. I believe the Jets placed him on there about 2 weeks ago or something like that.
Would make sense.
So I'm not sure how much he's doing.
Yep, and it's really important. He put out a post on Instagram just saying, my time will come, something like that kind of deal. But the importance here that we need to remember is they're not expecting him to be like the true even backup to Aaron Rodgers this upcoming season. What they already have in that room. This is all about the future for the Jets, and from what we've heard and a lot of things, this organization really thinks that this is the future at quarterback for them once Aaron Rodgers calls it quits. So there's no rush on him. As I'm about to share here, he's over here having a good time out at practice, making.
He had a nice one-handed catch. Yeah,
look at that.
We've seen that a couple of times at FSU.
He's got hands, man. I mean, we talked. Remember when we talked about Jordan Travis to wide receiver? How are we thinking? Literally, the coaching staff talked to him about it. He's admitted it. But yeah, no, that is super skilled athlete, and just seems like just taking some really cautious beginnings with him. Definitely in the training camp.
Another guy that's been injured throughout most of camp so far is Jaheim Bell. But when he's been on the field, every Patriots reporter is like, "Oh my God, who is this dude?" He was back on the field either today or yesterday, and apparently had a really, really good practice, and was really good at the start of camp too. He's just been dealing with a little bit of injuries, but they seem to really like him up there in New England.
It seemed like Jarian Jones. We didn't talk about him, even though we're in Jacksonville today. It seems like he's had a pretty good camp for the most part, competing up there. I think with the starters, or right in that group where it seems like he's going to play a pretty big role in Jacksonville this season. I think he forced a turnover the other day in one of the practices, if I was reading correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
And maybe the thing that caught my attention the most was an interview with a local Jacksonville reporter where Jarian was talking about his socks and that he never wears the same pair of socks twice. If he puts on a pair of socks, he throws it away when he takes them off his feet. He never wears the same pair twice.
Now, is he doing that in regular clothing kind of socks, or it's all football socks? I could understand because they just get unlimited socks all the time. They're lucky.
I'm not sure. He made it seem like anytime he wears socks, he throws them away.
That's insane.
Yeah, we need to get him back on here.
I don't know about you guys, but I got about 6 pairs of socks total. I mean, if I throw them away, I'm out this week.
No, I've got closer to 60 pairs of socks. But
60
with all them shoes, yeah.
I get cold feet. Like, it's just a thing.
Yeah, you got them granny kind of socks too, don't you, VZ?
No.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. What you got on right now? Can you show us what kind of socks you got on right now?
No, because my hips aren't good enough to do that. But I've got on the FSU Rock'em socks.
FSU, those keep your feet really, really warm. You got them granny socks.
They're not
like hospital. Socks. You got the ones that come up to your shins, even hospital gown socks.
By hospital socks, you mean the one that had like the sticky part on the bottom?
Yeah.
I have a pair because I've been through surgery. Yes, but I don't wear them.
Okay.
I don't wear them. Okay. With as many injuries as I've had, you kind of have to be cautionary.
Yeah, you already load up for the surgeries and everything you get into. You're already decked out in the gown, and you already got it ready before you have to change in there. Let's just get this shit going.
Like I just moved the coaches to storage after not having surgery in 4 years. So,
knock on wood.
Yeah.
You better find some wood. Is that wood? Is that plastic?
Yeah.
That sounded plastic.
That's wood. That's wood.
All right. Making sure that's hardwood. What kind of wood?
That was softwood.
Wood is wood. It's one of those tray table things.
Okay. Just double checking. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. We're already at an hour and a half, and it feels like we were just talking on here for 10 minutes. VZ probably thinks we've been on here for 3 hours, but that's going to do it. We got so much more fall camp to get into, and then we're going to start getting into our season predictions here pretty soon once we get into it might be next week. Then we have to preview Florida State versus Georgia Tech.
It's got to be next week.
Dude, week 0 is tough, man. Week 0 is rough. We have to really get back to work.
It was easier when week 0 was Duquesne because we couldn't talk about Duquesne, so we just talked about everything else.
Yeah, exactly. But now there's actually a decent opponent that Florida State's going to be facing. I shouldn't say decent. That could come back to bite me.
Good. I'm pretty sure I said watch out for Duquesne.
You did, and I made fun of you for it.
Yeah, that's you.
What an idiot.
But before we jump off, I think there's like close to 200 people on YouTube or somewhere in that range. If you hit the like button, we would certainly appreciate it a ton. Really do. We've been growing in viewership this off season. We try to stay as consistent as possible, and it's been awesome to have you guys in the chat and more of you liking and also subscribing. We're throwing up a lot of shorts as well from what Dustin and Tommy are shooting out there for us, and Dylan, all them. Definitely appreciate it if you like, and also to subscribe. We're putting a lot of focus into our YouTube channel. We've been doing it the last year, 2 years. So a lot of content coming your way. So if you want to hang out with us more, we're live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. As always, you can listen to this podcast on audio versions, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We're on there. And make sure you subscribe so you get notified every time we release a new episode. Enjoy the rest of y'all's week. D-Lou, enjoy practice tomorrow out in the intramural field. It's going to be hot and sweaty, buddy. So enjoy it. Best of luck to you, D-Lou.
I'm praying. And I got a gallon of sunscreen that I'm just going to dump on my head tomorrow.
Don't wear black. Stop wearing black out there.
That's all he has.
Yeah, that's all you got. No, that's all you got. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest.